Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to the best 60 minutes of your week. I hope that's not a disappointment or discouragement for the rest of your week, but it's going to be a really good hour here of Buckeye football talk, as it always is. Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time with all of you. Please bring your friends and Buckeye friends in for the discussion each and every week. From the top, Kevin Noon from Buckeye Huddle, and also Big Me Kickoff. We got, Steve Hellwagon in the middle there, if my eyes aren't failing me. Bucknuts 247 Sports, and then another Buckeye Huddle guy. Of course, it's Tony Gerdeman there on the bottom. How we doing today, folks?
Doing well.
Good.
All right. Good. Well, I got to tell you that I'm guessing that this is not a vintage Wisconsin team or a vintage Wisconsin defense. However, I can believe that the floor is fairly high for that program, and the worst Wisconsin teams that we ever see are still pretty darn good and got to be at least top 40 good, especially on defense. They're usually in the top 5 statistically and probably more in the 5 to 10 range when you add in the talent factor on defense. So if this is a bad Wisconsin defense, what Ohio State did, Kevin, on Saturday was still pretty spectacular, minus Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at an Ohio State team that doesn't have its leading receiver from last year in there, but they're able to just keep rolling through with wave after wave. They jump out to a 28-0 lead. I mean, it's like a hot knife through butter. I mean, Wisconsin had no answer for anything Ohio State did. There were a lot of concerns about what will Ohio State be able to do against, a perennial defensive powerhouse in terms of Wisconsin. They were able to throw at will. They were able to run at will. You sit there and you look at, really we'd be remiss if we don't talk about the emergence of Cade Stover. I mean, Cade Stover had a big impact early in the game. Teams are going to have to start defending him. And what is that going to mean elsewhere when teams actually have to start taking an Ohio State tight end as an offensive playmaking threat? What does that mean for everybody else, especially once JSN does return?
Yeah, I all too very much impressed. The first 4 drives for the Ohio State offense were just works of art. I made a comment on radio this morning. I said they need to send those 4 possessions to the Louvre, because although they didn't go over the top for a 50-yard touchdown or anything silly like that, they were picking up yards in 12 and 15 and 18-yard chunks, running the ball, throwing the ball, dumping the ball off to the tight end for big yards. So everything was clicking. It was like they talk about, the basket must have looked a mile wide and a mile long, because as Ryan Day was looking down at his play sheet, he could just go like this and figured that whatever he was going to call was going to be a good call. So I was very impressed with everything that I saw out of those first 4 possessions. And 13 of the first 23 plays went for 10 yards or longer. And 3 of those were touchdowns inside the 5-yard line that couldn't go 10 yards. So, you look at it like that, it was very impressive.
Yeah, that was as good of a stretch of play calling as I've ever seen from Ryan Day or Tom Herman or Jim Tressel or Jim Bowman. Going back many, many years, certainly better than the latter. It was really impressive. They had Wisconsin's head spinning all over the place, and that's part of the joys of having a balanced attack. And they were able to outnumber Wisconsin's defense however they wanted to do it, and whichever item that Wisconsin gave Ohio State, they took it because they're as adept at running the ball as they are throwing. They're as adept at throwing out wide as they are over the middle, and they can stretch you vertically, they can stretch you horizontally, and then they can do the same thing with their running game with Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson. And right now, as long as CJ Stroud has time, he's been deadly. And I was even charting his incompletions. He threw 10 incompletions, and I think 3 were not accurate throws. Everything else was there or hit off of somebody's hands, or he was pressured. And so, another outstanding outing by an offense that is getting better and better and finding new weapons while they're waiting for Jackson Smith and Jigba to come back. And it's pretty amazing. You can lose Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and essentially Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then just, I would say they missed a beat against Notre Dame because everybody was thrust into new situations a bit, but they've moved on now and they're doing well.
Because, Tony, that's the fascinating part of playing a team as good as Wisconsin on the defensive side, as good as Wisconsin typically is, because we know what the deal is athletically. We know that they're really good, but there are differences in matchups. But Wisconsin's usually so airtight. It's this they're figuring it out. They're there. They're in the position. Okay, Ohio State made a 15-yard play out of athleticism. They just be, and then maybe there's at some point they can't be perfect on the defensive scheme. There's a bust. There's something maybe that's going to break open a 14-10 game at some point, something like that. But yeah, from play one, it was like, did they prepare for any of this? Because it's the athleticism, but it's the nobody's in position.
Yeah, you're being out schemed and you're being out athleted, and that's a terrible place to be. And it kind of starts with Wisconsin having to deal with the fact that Ohio State spreads them out and then can run powerful football. And so you've got a Wisconsin defense that much of the time it's just 2 defensive linemen and then 2 outside linebackers and 2 inside linebackers because they need a 5th defensive back. And so where did they take that guy from? They took him from the defensive line. And if you're going to take somebody from the defensive line against Ohio State, they're going to run for 260 yards on you, and they're going to be patient. And that's what Ryan Day, I think, has grown just this year in being more patient with the running game, because he talked about maybe they went away from that a little too early against Notre Dame. They didn't go away from it. And then by sticking with it, it allows you to have more success with the passing game. And that's what I'm talking about with the being outnumbered. If they want to bring a 6th or 7th defender into the box, now who's defending? Like, everybody's single covered, and you might have 1 deep safety back there, and then you can work with guys over the middle. It's just really difficult for a lot of defenses to handle this offense if you don't have the talent. And it's hard to scheme up this offense because they can do whatever they want.
I got to say, one time last week, I had a Wisconsin guy on, and we were sizing up the matchup. He was kind of playing it out as we typically think of it. Ohio State wants to throw it constantly. They've got the athletic advantage, and we know what Wisconsin is, especially in the front 7. And, I just kind of interjected that this Ohio State run game may be different. It may not be that different on the stat sheet, but you have to watch it. You have to watch it be physical. The offensive line, the backs, Mayan Williams in particular, be physical, and that it was going to be fascinating because that's the Wisconsin bread and butter is nobody bullies us around in the front 7. But I was also surprised when we started to dig into, and Kevin may have done this last week, dig into the rushing numbers from Ohio State during this pass happy era, 2017 and beyond, that Ohio State has had fairly decent success against Wisconsin in these other matchups on the ground.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if I have my notes up here still. I think I've already pitched them and moved on to Rutgers because somebody has to move on to Rutgers. But yeah, Ohio State's been able to run the ball pretty well against the Badgers. We still have the bad taste in the mouths of where Ohio State wasn't necessarily able to run against certainly the team up north. There were some issues against Oregon, but Ohio State traditionally has been able to move the ball on the ground against the Badgers for as great as the defenses have been under Jim Leonhard. And it certainly wasn't any different. But, I think this was just a much more lunch pail, blue-collar, knock the snot out of you type of running game that we saw here than maybe we've seen in some other instances. And, you sit there and you take a whole off season of hearing about how you're not tough, how this has turned into a finesse Pac-12 type of offense, and guys are going to take that stuff seriously. And it really looked like these guys wanted to leave the Badgers black and blue by the end of the game.
Yeah, they punched the bully in the mouth, that's for sure. They came right out and had Wisconsin on their heels. And this is not something that you typically see Wisconsin suffer from, is kind of being shell-shocked into an early 14 or 21-point lead. And they're really not built as a big comeback team, although Mertz is trying to build that reputation as a thrower. The tight end Cundiff, once he got injured, that was a huge blow for them too, because he's one of their best playmakers. So I never did hear. Did anybody hear how he came out of that? Is he done for the year, or what?
Broken leg is what the reports were. Yeah,
that's terrible. So it just looked like a routine hit by Tanner McAllister, trying to get him down in space. And when you're a smaller guy, that's what you do, is you try to take the legs out of the bigger guy with the football. Tanner McAllister, as a side point, had perhaps his best game so far as a Buckeye with the interception, and he also denied them a touchdown with 5 seconds left in the first half on that fourth down bomb that he recovered and batted the pass away. So he's earned his stripes, I'd say, as a Buckeye. And we didn't even touch on the two freshmen, or the two young defensive backs. I don't know what J.K. Johnson is classified. Did he redshirt last year, or is he considered a sophomore?
Redshirt freshman.
And the other guy, Jair Brown, is a true freshman. And Jair Brown really hadn't played much in the first 3 games. And they go out there, they did a bang-up job. I thought Wisconsin had good receivers, and they barely threw for like 125 yards against 2 guys making their first career start at cornerback. I don't know. As I said, I thought Wisconsin had a decent enough passing game that Mertz would probably approach 200 yards, but he wasn't even close. So I don't know. I guess that's good for them.
Yeah, well, obviously he made the one really bad throw that needed to be so much further to the sideline on the pick by McAllister, where he cut in front, took it down to the 15-yard line. That was underthrown, and that was a mammoth mistake there. How much of the defensive effort do you guys think was Ohio State? Because, you guys are pointing out some outstanding plays, and McAllister was phenomenal, especially on those 2 plays that were, near plays of the game on the defensive side, versus the Wisconsin lackluster showing between Mertz and maybe the other strengths of the team typically not being what they typically are.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say this is a Wisconsin offense that scored 14 points against Washington State. So keep that in mind. Ohio State held the running game in check. I think Braylon Allen had 100 of his yards, like 98 yards rushing in the fourth quarter when the game was well in doubt. I don't think this is a very good Wisconsin offense. It's not an elite Wisconsin offensive line. Braylon Allen is very good, but they don't have a lot around him. And for J.K. Johnson and Jair Brown to grade out as champions in this game, it kind of also tells you the level of receiver that they were going against, in my opinion. They were both they did very well at corner, but they weren't really challenged by what Wisconsin had to give them. And even with that, you look at Wisconsin's schedule, and there is still a road to 10-2 because of who they're playing.
Yeah, and it's not a great Wisconsin team, but they weren't that good last year. They were fringe top 25 good. They went 8-4 in the regular season. This looks to be a fairly similar output out of Wisconsin. And there seems to be this argument when you look at Michigan in particular, but a few other teams across the country that at least up until last week had yet to play anyone, that, well, the defense is that they're just completely crushing, dominating them. And I understand that point. Now, to compare the UConns and Hawaiis of the world to Wisconsin is obviously a complete joke. And Ohio State, I don't care what the final score is. Like, I had a Michigan commenter or two yesterday try to convince me that last year's Wisconsin-Michigan game was somewhere, just because the final score was somewhere in the range at 38-17, somewhere in the range of this score, that those were similar contests. And I was like, you either are just looking at 2 final scores or you've never watched a football game in your life. Those are 2 completely, we're talking about a game that was, in duress into the fourth quarter at Camp Randall last year with Michigan, Wisconsin, a 1-score game. Then it widened versus this play 1 on, it was just a complete demolition. No comparison. All right, Yakov, we appreciate you being here. Voice of College Football. We're here every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Please track Kevin, Steve, and Tony, and we will catch you up on their platforms here in just a second. Yakov says Cade Stover will play 10-plus seasons in the NFL and make plenty of money.
Well, let's tap the brakes just a little bit. I like him. I mean, he is showing a lot of great characteristics. I'll tell you that. And Coach made a very good point that it really helps the cause when you have a guy who you can line up tight at tight end, and he can block, a defensive end, or he can get out in space and has the agility to block a linebacker or a defensive back, and then has the ability to come off the line of scrimmage and catch passes that the quarterback dumps off to him, or go out on a pattern and make a play downfield. And he's starting to do all of that. So you split out wide too. He was in the slot a couple of times and went out for passes there as well. So he's not just a tight end anymore. He's a little bit of everything. And that's when you really have value, because what the defensive coaches are looking for are the personnel groupings to tell them what the next play is going to be. And when he's on the field, you can run it, you can throw it, you can do just about anything you want to do in your arsenal with him on the field. So him being on the field is not a tip to the defense of what's coming, certainly, and they could do a lot with him. So, he's not just the run-only tight end that they trot out there to block. I mean, he's there. He's an every down player now, it seems like. So he's earned it, and he's worked really hard to improve his craft, and you could tell that hard work's really starting to pay off.
I could see him not playing 10 years in the league because he probably wants to get back to the farm. We're seeing more and more early retirements in the NFL. You make your money and you get out. And, we certainly on the telecast, and we've had the opportunity to talk to Cade on multiple occasions, but he wants to buy land up there in Lexington and be able to, raise cattle and do that type of stuff. But, back to Yakov's point, I mean, he has certainly emerged as, quite the tight end in the Ohio State offense. He has quite the quarterback throwing it to him. There are probably a lot of quarterbacks in the league, in the NFL, that aren't quite as accurate as CJ is right now. Granted, those quarterbacks in the league are probably under a lot more duress because pass rushes are a little bit more talent equated there. But it's very impressive because we see Jeremy Ruckert go off, get dropped in the third round by the Jets, and everybody's like, well, I guess this isn't going to be the year of the tight end. And then we get this heavy tight end dose of Stover early in the game, a couple of touchdowns. Honestly, probably should have had a third one with just a slight overthrow. I mean, he's really accomplishing everything. Nobody's really talking about Joe Royer. I mean, he didn't dress this last week. We obviously have Mitch Rossi, who has been doing his thing as well. But, the fact that a tight end can get mentioned in a room where all the oxygen gets sucked out because of all the great receivers that Ohio State has, that's a testament in itself.
Kevin, are you saying Cade Stover is going to play in the NFL until the cows come home?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That's funny.
I will say this is one of my favorite stats. Over the last 25 years, every single tight end that Ohio State has signed who did not medically retire, transfer, or move positions has made money in the NFL.
There you go. That's a stat.
That may just be practice squad. That may just be a cup of coffee. But every single one of those guys has signed cashed a check from the NFL. So I think Cade Stover, however long he'll be in the league, will be doing that as well.
So Jeremy Ruckert, I don't know if this was the Browns game 2 weeks ago or this was this past Sunday. I saw the ball headed in his direction. I thought, oh, there's Jeremy Ruckert going to get a catch. Oh, he dropped it. But just one drop. Just one drop out of Jeremy, so not a big deal there. All right, we got Kevin, we got Steve, we got Tony each and every Wednesday here at the Voice of College Football, and we want to make sure that you guys know where to find them on a regular basis. So, Kevin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. You can obviously find me at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and you can find my podcast, the Big Meat Kickoff Podcast, at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. This week we will Why am I the only one talking about Rutgers? I'll be talking to a Rutgers expert about the great James Gandolfini and this football team that is just going to show up, even though Greg Schiano seems to think that they're coming here to win, but I don't know what else he's supposed to say. But that more coming up on the Big Me kickoff that should probably drop on Thursday morning.
Steve.
Nothing big, just plowing through it here at the end of September, getting ready to turn the calendar over to October, and October is for champions or something. Or no, that's November. November is for champions. Well, October is for laying waste to whatever Big Ten fodder they put in front of you that can't get a first down. So that includes Rutgers and Iowa. Let's see, who's the other team they're playing? Michigan State. Yeah, those three teams I don't think they're going to have a problem with, and now you're kind of smooth sailing until you get to Penn State October 28th, so I guess, or 29th, I guess, whatever the date that is. So this is when you get people healthy, and I can't remember a Big Ten game with the spread 41 points or whatever it is on this game. I mean, it seems like an awful lot, but that's all that's going on right now. It's pretty quiet here, actually.
Tony.
I'm just looking to see the last time Ohio State was a 40-point favorite in the Big Ten, and I'm just, it was minus 38.5 in 2020 against Rutgers, and I'm sure there are other ugly ones against Rutgers. But yes, you can find me at Buckeye Huddle, the Buckeye Weekly podcast, of course, essentially every day during the season. But yes, this is Rutgers week. It's one of the biggest weeks of the year, so taking it very seriously with all kinds of deep dives. I can't let you know where those deep dives are right now. It's very secret. I probably won't get to them. Kevin dropped one though today, tail of the tape, the deepest dive you'll find. And so then I won't have to do anything about Rutgers other than talk about it after the fact. Although we will have a Friday game preview that I'm not sure how much previewing they'll be doing. Mostly just talking about all of the young guys that are going to play, which is how you usually handle these kinds of weeks.
Well, Rutgers probably goals on offense this week will be, let's stay on the field, and if we can prevent the defense from scoring against us, that's going to be a victory after what happened to them last week when they got outscored by the Iowa offense, or the Iowa defense, of course.
Yeah, I do would like to address the Greg Schiano comments about they're going to win. It reads reading the transcript, it's like says, we are going to win, but I think if you listen to him say it, it's like we're going to win, like we're going to Columbus to win. That's the intent. Like every time we go somewhere, it's to win. Not that Kevin was saying anything other than that.
These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Right. It's just how you read it and how you express it. But I mean, of course, they're coming to town to win. That may not go as well for them, and they've got quarterback issues, and well, it's Rutgers.
Well,
they've got issues everywhere.
They're 2-0 on the road this year. They beat Boston College by a point, and they beat Temple by 2 points. In the Temple game, they won 16-14 and didn't have an offensive touchdown. This past week, they scored 10 points against Iowa. So, let's just say they score 20, double that, 20 this week. They still lose by over 30 points to Ohio State probably. So, good luck with all that.
The over-under on number of quarters that Ohio State scores more total points than Rutgers scores in the entire game, I'll set at 1.5. What are you guys taking?
Over.
I
don't even have to think about that one. Over.
Yeah, over. Oh, yeah. Over.
Yes.
Because they score 14 points in 2 periods. That's a winner. So, yeah.
All right.
Hey, Mark, if we can, this is the one I wanted to talk about.
Yep.
The Terminator 13, thoughts on a diversified run game more than just the zone scheme this year, it seems. And been talking to Ryan Day about that and the players about that. And, you're seeing that with the I formation stuff and a lot of the pistol stuff. Like the offensive line loves it because it allows them to be aggressive. And Ryan Day said that they have guys that can do that now, including tight end, and you got the receivers that are blocking. It's like Julian Fleming, go watch him against Wisconsin, watch him blocking in the run game and in the passing game. It's everybody enjoys it more. It's like with the zone blocking, you've got like the center, the right guard, and the right tackle. You form a wall and you try to keep people from getting through, and you just give the running back a direction to go left or right. Whereas with a lot of this one-on-one stuff, hat on a hat, as I say, it's like you are your own wall. Just go push the man in front of you, 8 yards, 9 yards downfield. And DeJuan Jones has taken this literally and run with it. And so, yeah, they're having a lot of fun with that. And again, we looked in the past about, the running out of the shotgun, and the zone read looked at as never a zone read. And defensive ends can just come in and tee off on the running back because CJ Stroud isn't a threat to keep the ball. They're finding different ways to run the ball this year. And, I was tracking it against Toledo. I think they ran the ball out of the shotgun like 4 times, and one of those was a keeper by CJ Stroud. They're doing it in many different ways this year. So defenses can't just tee off on them or sit back or not sit back, but just, run after the running backs, knowing where the game is going to be, because they don't this year.
With the
I'll just add that Ohio State's ability to spread the field around with the football throwing it has opened up the running game, I think. And you talk about, you throw to run the ball, which is kind of converse. In this instance, they're more adept, and they were more adept throwing it probably last year than they were running it. I think the running game is now coming up to where it needs to be. They're the only team in the country that's averaging 300 yards passing and 200 yards rushing. USC and North Carolina were with them in that category up till last week, and then both of them fell by the wayside in that category. USC barely beat Oregon State, I believe, and North Carolina lost to Notre Dame. So Ohio State trampled Wisconsin. So, they're doing that against the best defense, one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. What are they going to do to the rest of these teams? I shudder to think.
Just as long as nobody gets bored, I guess is the problem. Just don't get bored.
They were asked about complacency. I think didn't our friend comrade our guy Gulick yesterday asked Mitch Rossi about complacency or something. How do you avoid getting complacent? Well, we play a game every 7 days, and what the hell? We'll try and give it our best effort every 7 days, and we'll just see what the hell happens at the end of the year.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of punchlines for defensive preparation over the next 2 weeks with Rutgers and Iowa lined up. That's for sure.
Well, there's a trip against to Michigan State with that outstanding running game of the Spartans. Well,
yeah, I guess we got.
It wasn't just the running back. What the heck happened there? I don't know. That's terrible.
It's bad there, and I'm not sure. There's no quick turnaround because there's nobody in the portal right now that they can go get like they did last year. And how much of Mel Tucker's $95 million should go to Kenneth Walker III? Should it be $80 million? How much does he deserve of that?
Pretty much all of it. Yeah.
Turns out a lot of it.
Sure looks like it. Because
hope you got a big signing bonus with that.
I was impressed with 2 players that played against Washington when I watched that game, and that was Peyton Thorne because he was running for his life, and he made about as many plays as you could possibly make. I don't care what the stats were. He got beat up in that game, and he was running for his life and still made a ton of plays to somewhat keep them in the game. And then Keon Coleman, the wide receiver, was usually on the other end of most of those plays. Otherwise, in the trenches, they got obliterated. Of course, their secondary got obliterated. And I just thought they would bounce back against Minnesota and make it a game, and they just showed to be that bad. Speaking of which, let's stay with the rivals then, because Michigan finally lined up with against somebody with a pulse last week. And, of course, it was much in a sense like the Ohio State-Notre Dame game where you could pull away from that game and say, let's shed a positive light on this, or we can go the negative route. So whoever wants to start first on – because I'm sure y'all
Michigan Monday guy.
Yeah, I was going to say this is
Michigan Monday guy. He's the expert.
Yeah, this is a Tony thing.
Well, I'll just say this: based on just a few bounces, this game could have been like 20-3 Maryland in the second quarter, and the first bounce off of a Maryland kick returner's face allowed Michigan to score their first touchdown of the game and set the tone. But yeah, I was very disappointed in, well, not, I can't say I was disappointed in Michigan. This is the first time we got to see actually what they can do.
A real football game.
Exactly. And I think right now, JJ McCarthy still thought he was playing against Hawaii and Colorado State in that game, taking way too much time with the ball and thinking he can get out of everything, basically like he's still in high school. And so he's learning that you can't do that. I thought Blake Corum was awesome. That's the best we've ever seen him. Just 243 yards rushing, 30 carries. I'm not sure how many times they want to do that with him. I'm not sure that he can hold up doing that. Not that many can. Defensively, I think Michigan is just a bunch of guys, and they need to be dudes, as Ohio State, like Mickey Marotti would say. Got to turn these guys into dudes. And I don't know how many dudes they have defensively right now. I think I've jokingly said that when your best pass rusher is your nickelback, who was your slot receiver last year, that's bad news. But Mike Sainristil, who is doing that, is really, really good this year. He's replaced Dax Hill, and he's been impressive. But the statement stands. Like, you need more than just a guy who was a receiver last year, and they're not getting much pass rush from as many guys as they did last year, obviously. And if they're not going to get pass rush, then the secondary is not going to hold up, and that's the linebackers as well. Like the back five, back six, they need a lot of help, and they're not getting it from the defensive line enough. And I don't know that they will.
It seemed to me, I'll just jump in real quick. I was at my nephew's football game in Grove City, and I was following it on the phone and then listening to it in the car on the way home, that they got outplayed for about 28 minutes in the first half. And other than the fumble on the kickoff, and then right before halftime, Maryland had the lead. And then I think Corum broke off a long run, and Michigan finally grabbed the lead. And I think they held it from there on. It just seemed like they didn't play very well for the first 28 minutes of that game, other than punching it in at the beginning and then scoring at the end of the half. The middle 27 or 28 minutes of that half, they got woefully outplayed, and Maryland missed on some opportunities, as Tony said, to really, grab a double-digit lead perhaps in that game, from what I can recall. Then the second half, Tagovailoa got banged around a little bit, and Raheem Jarrett got banged around a little bit, and I think Maryland, maybe just kind of realized, we're playing at Michigan. What's our place in the and they didn't finish the game. They didn't do the things they needed to do in the fourth quarter, get stops on defense, make plays on offense, finish drives. When they had opportunity to score points, they had good field position and failed and got the ball back and couldn't do anything with it. So, that it ended up a 7-point win for Michigan. I would say Maryland is much improved from what I could tell. I think Ohio State's going to be in for a little bit of a shootout when they go out there, unless the Ohio State defense can really, really play its best game. I think they're going to be in for a little bit of a shootout out there, and gives Ohio State another good game, I think, down the stretch. I think Maryland's going to beat some people. They're going to beat Michigan State. They're going to beat everybody else in the division they're going to play. Probably not going to beat Penn State, but I don't know who their crossovers are. But, they're going to win some games. So, maybe they win 8 games this year. I don't know.
Their crossovers are Purdue in Maryland, Northwestern at Maryland, and then at Wisconsin. So
that's 2-1.
At least 2.
2-1 probably, yeah. I came away more impressed with Maryland during certain stretches than I was going into that game, and certainly came away not as impressed by Michigan for large stretches of the game. As Tony said, Blake Corum was a dude out there. I mean, but that's a lot for them to put on him, and Donovan Edwards has been hurt, so they brought out a true freshman back on his first carry, fumbled the ball. So they're one deep right now at running back until Donovan Edwards gets back. I think that Michigan had to kind of sit there and play somebody with a pulse, and it woke them up. And it wouldn't surprise me if they don't struggle for the next few weeks because they had their wake up call. But as I told some people before, I'm not expecting Maryland to win this game, but I'm expecting Maryland to show some deficiencies in this Michigan juggernaut, and I think that some things certainly surfaced, and because of that those are things that everybody's going to have on their cut-up tapes when they get ready to play Michigan.
Yeah, and Maryland could have played better. This was not their best game. Michigan was also the beneficiary of a bad interception that should have been overturned and hit the ground. DJ Turner, cornerback for Michigan, was allowed to keep the ball, and that stopped the Maryland drive. So they got some breaks, but then they made the most of them. And now I'm interested to see what happens this week at Iowa, where Iowa's just really, really good on defense, and how well can Michigan's offense perform? Now, is this going to be one of those you improve most from game 1 to game 2? Because I consider this game 1 to game 2 for Michigan. And so they're done with the preseason. Now it's time for the regular season, and we'll see how they do going up to Iowa. But as Kevin said, the depth at running back. So Blake Corum gets tired. They bring in the freshman. He fumbles. Later on, I think it was to start the third quarter, they run Corum 4 straight times, and then he gets tired, and it's 3rd and 4, and they bring in a walk-on running back who picks up 2 yards. Like, for one, that's how deep they are right now, and that's who they can trust. For 2, why are you running on 3rd and 4 with a walk-on running back? That's just bad play calling.
And I think that walk-on running back weighs about 175 pounds, and they charged him straight up the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan's favored by 11 at Iowa. That's kind of an intriguing line.
14-3?
11-0.
What's that? Yeah, 11-0 will be the final score. Somebody put on there, take Iowa in the points. I'm kind of torn on that one. Which Iowa team is going to show up? Will Iowa even get a first down? I think that's a big question. They had 2 defensive touchdowns and beat Rutgers 27-10. Without those, they win the game 13-10. So I don't know.
With any other team in America, I would say that formula is not sustainable, but it's been sustainable for them for 20 years. So it's sustainable to some degree. But that's a little difficult against Michigan. But on the flip side, this is JJ on the road against a competent team, a great defense for the first time ever. So, I look at these decisions he makes that he believes he can make, and you do want your players to play free and use their athleticism. So there's a fine line between making stupid mistakes and, taking advantage of your God-given talent. Well, there was one particular play. He danced around and circled back, and he ran him out of field goal range. They missed the field goal after he loses 15 yards. There was a couple other plays where I thought, okay, he may get caught. I think Maryland's that middle tier defense, much better than what they've seen, but Iowa's going to ratchet that up considerably. So there are a few times in the pocket where he's holding that ball and he's dancing around, but he's staying in the pocket. It's one thing once you escape, you're in the clear. You can look for the sideline and pick up your 12 yards. But when he's dancing around the pocket, holding that ball loose, and Iowa's the perfect defense that looked for those opportunities to strip sack, knock the ball out of his hand, do the batted ball up in the air. They just come up with those plays that he's not going to be able to pull that. The other thing about his overthrows, so he had 4 consecutive downfield overthrows. So if you're not sure about the quarterback, I think you don't mind seeing the overthrows because the thought is, well, he's got a strong arm. He's overthrowing everybody. We can always dial it back because if the guy with a really good wide receiver room can't take advantage of him because he can't throw the ball that far, then that's a problem. But at the same time, if this continues to be an issue, if it's 3 games from now and he's still overthrowing most of those, well, you rather have him underthrow and give the receivers a chance to catch the ball because they have the probably 70 or 30, 80, 20 advantage on those supposed 50-50 balls. So there was also a Maryland interception down near the goal line when the guy got out of bounds by about that much that cost them a field goal that was put on the board by Michigan. So there are mistakes in football games, then there are gifts. And what Maryland gave them on a few occasions were or the officials on the interception by DJ Turner gifts. All right.
You also had JJ McCarthy fumbling twice, and Michigan recovered both of those. Iowa is pretty good on finding ways to get the turnover, and if I'm wondering if he's going to, they're going to focus so much this week on you being careful with football. I wonder how conservative he is going to be, and how much that sets the offense back, because he's not going to be as aggressive. So now you're almost dictating, like, we're going to try to win this 21-14, something like that. And if you're trying to win by a touchdown, anything can happen in the fourth quarter, especially with a quarterback who is afraid to make plays, or if he tries, he might turn it over. And he is fumble prone, as we've seen throughout his career once he gets going. And so it's going to be interesting. I will still side with Michigan on this one, because I can't possibly side with Iowa's offense in any form or fashion. It's just against my religion.
So this is another instance of you with sports cashing where you're saying lay the 11 and don't worry about it.
Not in the road in Iowa. I don't I only have fun on the road at Iowa. I do not do anything else. I don't put money on the road, because I've seen too many. We've seen too many guys.
Did you guys see the tweet about the guy from Kansas who said that they had the sports gambling was approved in Kansas, and his goal was to win $7,000 this fall, and as of right now, he only needs to win $22,000 more to make that happen. That's too much.
It's a cruel mistress, is what it is. I might get rid of my cell phone when we get it here in Ohio, because I don't want to be tempted.
Don't install the app. That's I'm even debating on our trip to Penn State. We always kind of pull off at Wheeling Island and put a couple dollars down on this or that. I'm like, I may just take the 470 and go around the other way and skip the island. Because if you go straight on 70, you go right past the island. So if I take the outer belt around Wheeling, I can avoid dropping the money at Wheeling Island. So we'll see.
No.
Perish the thought.
Jeff, appreciate the kind words there. Thank you so much for that. Can Ohio State beat Alabama or Georgia or other top 10 teams? Well, I think we're talking about two different situations there. First and foremost, I think the three, and I usually wouldn't make this statement this early in the season, but I do think what most of us assumed preseason, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia being separate from the rest of the country, I think it's playing itself out. And then trying to figure out the next 10 or 15, I think they can all knock each other off depending on the matchups. And maybe you could extend that out beyond 10 or 15 teams past that. So I know this is way too early, but everyone who wants to tackle the Ohio State matchup against Alabama and Georgia.
Well, there are a dearth of teams. You get beyond those first three, and it's a real dearth, I think, of teams. When you're having to hunt and put USC in the top 10 after they barely won at Oregon State, and Penn State is in the top 10 and whatever, or right outside the top 10, and you're really scratching to find teams to fill it out. I think, you get beyond those first three, it is a little bit of a crapshoot who's going to show up. Even Clemson, I give Clemson grudgingly a little bit of credit for winning that game in overtime on the road. Could have very easily just given in and lost to Wake Forest any number of ways, but DJ kept bringing them back, and they pulled it out. As far as playing Alabama and Georgia, I think Ohio State matches up pretty well with either one of them right now. We've seen Georgia look dominant in their one, talent equated game. I guess South Carolina quasi talent equated game, but what was it? Oregon, they ran off the field in the first game of the season. Then they kind of played with their food against Sanford and Kent State here, a couple of the lesser opponents. So, we haven't seen Ohio State really do that yet. So, does comparing what Ohio State did to Toledo to what Georgia did to Kent really matter? Probably not. I want to see what they do when they play, the tougher teams on their schedule as they get into it. Alabama, man, 1-point win at Texas and have looked really good otherwise. I mean, they beat up on Vanderbilt, which, kind of the same thing as Ohio State beating up on Toledo. I don't know. I guess we still need to know more. And Alabama's going to be tested. They've got some tough games coming up. So they play Tennessee at some point, which, again, Tennessee is one of those teams that's kind of falling upward, not really playing like a top 5 team, but being ranked kind of like a top 5 team right now. So, we'll see here in a few weeks when it all kind of shakes out. There might be a 2-loss team that makes the playoffs this year. I don't know. There's a lot of teams beating one another, and it's going to get real crazy here. There's 5 games this week matching ranked teams, and we'll see who can survive that.
What if Tennessee's only losses this year are to Alabama? Once in a couple of weeks, and then once in the SEC title game, and they look good against everybody else. Because right now, Alabama's next 3 games will dictate their season, and it's not like it's a murderer's row. It's at Arkansas, which could be a 3-quarter game, maybe. I mean, and then they're at home against Texas A&M, which I don't know why Texas A&M is still ranked 17th in the nation, but they are. And then they're at Tennessee, and then they've got nothing until like at LSU is nothing really, in my opinion. At Mississippi State or at Ole Miss is whatever. So these next 3 games, they'll be able to rebuild any lost luster to try to get back into that number 1 ranking and jostle back and jockey back and forth with Georgia for that number 1, while Ohio State just stays at 3 because they can't possibly pass an SEC team while they're beating other SEC teams.
Just means more.
It does. At least we know that.
To your point, Steve, maybe Clemson, USC, and Oklahoma were the candidates coming into last weekend to see, okay, can any one of those 3, they look like maybe the 3 best candidates to join the other 3, but then Oklahoma loses their annual game against Kansas State. Clemson struggles and basically needs to find what's going on in their secondary, and even their great defensive line was neutralized in that game, giving up 45 points, and USC escapes in a game where they were given 4 interceptions on the road. So yeah, I don't know if anybody's really that good aside from those 3. It's does Oklahoma State, they play Baylor this week, does the winner of that game step up? Penn State's out there. NC State taking on Clemson this Saturday night. That's going to divide that conference and distinguish somebody as the best. And Tennessee intrigues me.
Yeah, but you look at USC, like are they basically a 1-game season at this point? They're at Utah in the middle of October, and then at UCLA towards the end of the season, and home against Notre Dame. That's basically it. And maybe they start to look ahead and get tripped up at home against Washington State, but I don't see it. Caleb Williams played poorly and then still did enough to win. I just think they have too much offense right now for everybody else. But then, what happens in the Pac-12 championship game. But, what happens if Penn State and Michigan, their only losses are to Ohio State? Like one of those 2 teams, their only losses to Ohio State. And you're just going to have a bunch of the same because everybody is outside of the top 3. Everybody just kind of looks the same. And so I think it's going to come down to, the losses, and as we know, losing to Alabama is as good as beating a Penn State or a Michigan. We know that. So
that's a quality win.
It is. It's better than anybody else is doing.
Yeah.
As long as it's close, and you only have to lose close to them once, because that's the one that people will remember. That's the one that counts. That's the one you turn in. Like the outlier is the big loss. The one that you turn in to the committee is the close one. And so it'll be interesting to see how all of these teams that are looking the same are all shake out. And I will not be surprised, as I've said before, if there's a 3rd SEC team trying to get in there and maybe finding a way to do it.
Ugh.
That was Ohio State's issue in 2017 and 18. They had to hand in the egregious loss. They weren't allowed to hand in all those top 15 wins.
Well, it's
the
different.
SEC Invitational on ESPN.
But they don't look at conferences, the committee.
No.
The
But
dog
they
named
sure have a
Brutus.
lot of they always have random SEC teams ranked in the top 25 towards the bottom where nobody is looking so that they can, well, Alabama has all of these ranked wins. It's like, yes, because you have 4-loss Arkansas at 25. Why? So that we could say Alabama has all of these ranked wins.
There was the year they played Colorado State and they snuck them in at 25, like at the end of the year too. Well, here they are. They're right here.
Mhm.
They're right here. You know.
Well, that's because Arkansas lost to all ranked teams. So you get to keep them in.
There's always justification, and it's always so funny listening to them each week change their reasoning for stuff on what they do. And you just they should just go to, well, we wanted to do it this way. Why do you have this team here? That's what we wanted.
That's what we saw.
You're just trying to make me angry is all you're doing right now. I'm just sitting here, my legs shaking. I'm just like, and the best part is I can't wait until we start having to do our Tuesday shows from the committee in Grapevine as they sit there and just make this stuff up as they go along, and so on and so forth.
It's like recapping fan fiction, basically.
Wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, we're only a few weeks away from those Tuesday recaps. Very nice. Yes, those will be fun. All right. Dog named Brutus asks, what do you guys think of the job Perry Eliano and Tim Walton are doing with the defensive backs, considering the inexperience and injuries?
Outstanding. Those guys are worth every dollar they're paying them. Walton in particular, to get J.K. Johnson and Jair Brown ready to go, and neither of them had really played many plays at all. And, Cam Brown and Denzel Burke out, who knows how long. If it was just one game or whatever, Burke's got some kind of huge wrap on his hand, broken wrist, broken finger. Who knows what that is, but, you just don't know when he's going to be available. So again, you're going through the stretch of games where you can get away playing a backup or two here or there, and not, worry too much about it. But I do think that those guys deserve all the credit. We knew that they had 6 safeties that they figured could play, and they've used a lot of them so far. Haven't seen as much Court Williams or Cameron Martinez at safety maybe as we would have thought, but the guys who have played have done an outstanding job.
Yeah, I will echo everything Steve is saying. Like, those guys, to get as many safeties ready as they have, to be able to you bench Josh Proctor after one series, and Lathan Ransom comes in and plays fantastic. And then Josh Proctor comes back the next week and starts again and plays fantastic, as after many people had written him off and already thrown Lathan Ransom in the starting lineup. Then, Ransom is still out there at times and playing well. Then he's not available in this game against Wisconsin. Doesn't matter. Josh Proctor is really, really good. I was shocked rewatching the game. I didn't realize how early Sonny Styles came in. And he was in the first quarter. And
I think it was the first series or second series.
Unbelievable that he is already in there. And I think he might be one of the reasons we haven't been seeing much of Court Williams, even though that was just the one play. I think Josh Proctor and Ronnie Hickman and Lathan Ransom doing as well as they have, and Tanner McAllister actually as well, showing that Jim Knowles doesn't need to bring in 3 linebackers or 2 linebackers and a big safety to defend the run. Like, they're doing it with his defense as they want to do it. And they had talked about Court Williams as this quasi Sam linebacker type safety and the plans they had for him. But it's a lot like 2019 when they had plans for Brendan White as the bullet, but they found out Pete Werner could do everything they needed from that position. I think they're finding out that Tanner McAllister and what they're doing is able to do everything that they want to do from that position. And Jim Knowles pretty much, I think he kind of knew that going in because he's been with Tanner McAllister for 4 years now. So, like, all of those guys are doing really well. And as the Tim Walton, to get those young guys ready to be churning through corners as he has been this year and just putting new guys in and getting everybody prepared has been pretty impressive. And I think it will help out down the road, down the season, October, November, when you don't want guys to get too tired and you want them to be ready for November, late November. And you can throw in J.K. Johnson for a series. You can throw in Jair Brown for a series and just keep guys fresh. It's necessary.
You know what we haven't heard all season so far? Knock on particle board. Why won't these defensive backs turn their head in coverage? We haven't heard that. So apparently everything must be working out well because, heck, I think the week before the season started, I think on this show, I think we had a question about it. So, sign them to long-term extensions.
Right, folks, if you own a business, especially in the Buckeye State, you may want to sponsor us here at the Voice of College Football, Ohio State. Contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. We will let you know how we can benefit you. So keep that under consideration. Or if you are in contact with anyone that owns a business, let them know or let me know. Let's make sure we can track Kevin, Steve, and Tony throughout the week. Tony, we'll start with you.
You can find me at Buckeye Huddle. You can find me on Twitter at Tony Gerdeman. Yeah, check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you're interested in becoming a member of a premium message board, premium website, you can find information there to do that. But also the podcast, Buckeye Weekly Podcast, dropping about 7 days a week during the season.
We are so thankful that Steve posts our videos on 247 Sports Bucknuts. So please, you can give them some more traffic and still watch the show when you're not able to join us live. So Steve, thank you so much for that as always. And any particular radio spots that you've got coming up this week?
I do a spot. I was on 97.1 this morning, and I think they posted that on Twitter, and that was kind of fun with Bobby Carpenter and Brandon Beam, the show they call The Morning Juice. And then this afternoon, I do one every Wednesday at 4 o'clock with my old friend Ken Rhoda. He used to be on WKNR in Cleveland. He's now on WHBC in Canton. He and his partner JT have a show in the afternoon there. And usually every week we preview the upcoming game. And we usually spend about 20 minutes going through it pretty good there on WHBC. And they usually post the audio as well that after it's over. So those are my two big ones. And then I'm on 92.3 in Cleveland. I think it's called The Fan with Garrett Bush, usually on Saturday every week leading up to the game. So check those out. Those would be my three big ones. Oh, and Spectrum News, I do a segment with them as well, talking about the games each week. And it's kind of sporadic when that airs, but people tell me that they have the cable Spectrum and they've engineered the boxes now to where if you don't have it preset, it comes onto their news channel. What a coincidence for them to own the box and own the channel. And you turn your TV on and it magically appears on their channel. And people will say they're aghast when the TV comes on and my head appears. So, that's kind of a scary thought, as we go into Halloween month here for people turning their TV on.
Yeah, every so
Steve-O
often.
lantern.
That's it. I have a big enough head.
Yeah, I'll get a screenshot from somebody every so often that's watching on like 55 inches. And I'm like, dear God, look at that.
Terrible.
Kevin.
Yeah. As Tony said earlier, I just dropped the tail of the tape for Rutgers, a deep dive into the Scarlet Knights. All that it made me do was want to sit there and load up on Ohio State giving the points. But you can check that out over at Buckeye Huddle. On Fridays, I tape with Jeff Swank on Sports, which is big up in the Mansfield area, a podcast there. As I said, I will be doing the Big Meat Kickoff podcast. I'll be taping it today, dropping it tomorrow. And I'm sure Tom Orr and Tony Gerdeman will have me on 17 more shows between now and kickoff. So just look for me online. I'm always there. And, of course, Kevin_Noon at Twitter.
2019, Ohio State 52.5-point favorite at Rutgers. And last year, only a 15-point favorite.
Only 15?
Mm-hmm.
1-5?
That's what Phil Steele says. You call Phil a liar?
Oh, no, never would I call Phil a liar. What was that, like 52-24? What was that score?
I don't know if I'm going to my historical line page. It takes me a couple of clicks.
52-13 last year.
52-13. All right.
They did not cover in 2019 because they didn't try. And
Yes.
that was the year with all of the crazy special teams trick
Yep.
plays and everything that was in the junk drawer. They threw it out there.
Yeah, there was a time until about 5 years ago that I could recite every score in Ohio State history, like 1978. But that's left me. We got a big day here at the Voice of College Football. Our next show is Oklahoma Sooners Live. We're going to have to explain that Kansas State game, and Adrian Martinez looking like Michael Vick against OU. And we got Michigan Live later at 5, Florida State at 6, Miami at 7, coming off that scintillating performance against Middle Tennessee. Woo!
We got some loser birds today. That's good.
Yeah. Appreciate you all being here, making this happen, of course. See you next week.
Sounds good, guys.